So homework, right? This time, we're trying to clone ticket box. So you have the chance to make something prettier than ticket box. But the point is that you also write a lot of test code. So don't worry so much. Really, if you can make it pretty, you know, that's that's good. But if you don't, really just focus on learning testing this week. So we inspired by Ticketbox. Let's look at Ticketbox and see what happens here. Can you shout out some model names that we have for this app? User, yes, 1 point. Event, 2 points. Boo, what models do I have in this class? Huh? Price? Okay, price could be a column, but, huh? Location or venue. Okay, what else? Huh? Checkout? I was like, order? Okay. Category? Yeah. So, ticket? Exactly. Event and ticket. And you're like, okay, are they similar? Yes, no, right? All right, so go back to these guys. And we actually have a starter project. We'll start doing that. See, you have to fulfill these stories for events, tickets, users. All right, and let's try to do it together. So I start by cloning this guy, which I already did. I just go to this website and type git clone, and then ticket, whatever it's this coder ticket URL. Next, I already have the project. What after cloning? Ooh, hey, hello. You after cloning, what do I do? Run bundle, right? We haven't covered test at all. So the first thing here is, how do I run my test, guys? Does anyone know? Huh? So Drake test. What if you run and you get an error like this? You say bundle exact rake test, and it passes. Now with Rails 4, you actually can also do that, whatever works for you, right? Bin rake. So it says that one run, one assertion. This, where is it from? This is one test. It passes. So let's take a look. So in my code up here, my test is down here, and I just take a look at these tests. Well, not in the fixtures, right? And this somewhere I have a test. So no test in there, no test in there. Somewhere, right? I have a test that say, I can't even find it. Oh, this one. You see? Should get that test, right? So let's write some test that is good. Let's look at the model. Let's write a model test. So which one should we write a test for? Which one do you like? Event? Okay, let's try event. Oh man, see, event has venue, category. Maybe it's harder to test event. Let's give me a simpler one. Give me a simpler one. Okay, category. Okay, maybe it's good. We just test a category, whether you have name or not. How do you create it, right? Okay, let's try that. So to test this guy, you go to the same path, right? Test, models, category test. So we go between these guys. Okay, let's test this category. Maybe test. What do you want to test? Test what? Validation of name. Okay. So in here I say category is category.new, and then if it's the regular test, you just do assert. So you can say assert equal. Category, maybe I call category.save. Yeah. It should it pass or not pass? Yeah. It will save to the test database. Good question. So here's the database YAML file, and you have development here, and you have the test. This one. The difference is the database name. All the configuration is the same. Okay. And every time you run the test, it just empty the database and then create a new one. So you can create whatever you like. Okay, so that's a good question. So now I'm saying if I just create a category, this should fail, right? So normally with the test, you actually try to do something that is like, oh, let's see if it fails. It's easier to test that way. So if I run this, it will say fail, right? And then here's the problem. Boo, can you help me turn off the light? It's easier. Thank you. All right. Wow, so beautiful. Right, test validation of name. So, but this test is not very good, right? You want to be more specific. So, when is this test useful, guys? So I'm gonna make it always false. So now it passes. When is it useful? If someone come along and doesn't like my code, someone say, well, category can be entertainment, learning, everything else, or even maybe like music. But this person feel like, oh, but this is, I want to add music, TV, and everything else. So I just comment it out. And then your code in some places, that's not a good thing because you want to validate to make sure your code is safe, right? And you run this. Now it fails because this validation you actually test, right? So it's clear why it's failing, right? But it's not good because don't worry, I'm actually filming this on my computer, so you will have the video. So how can I test this validation? It's even better. Can anyone guess? After you call save, I can actually do more assertions. Why not? Errors on name. Let's just compare it to something, blah. You can compare it to anything. And the good thing about learning how to test is that you just write really simple code and then you get what you expected. So the errors on name now is not included in the list. So you can write a better test code, right? So basically here is not included in the list. So if someone read your code, it reads like English, maybe it's better to communicate what the app's trying to do. Then you're like, okay, but my people will not understand what assert equal is and this assert thing. It's a little hard to read. So what's my solution? I want to write tests in a more beautiful language, maybe, right? But before we do that, I just want to say this is the default Rails testing framework in the test folder. Who knows what testing library it uses? We will learn R-Spec, but this is the default unit testing framework, right? Minitest. So in recent Rails version, it uses Minitest, and it's Minitest unit. It's a unit testing syntax. Minitest also have R-Spec. It's called, so you look Minitest. They have spec framework syntax as well. So by some Ruby group in Seattle, Washington, and they basically try to create this thing that's better than the default Ruby testing framework. So now it comes in default as of Ruby 2, and you can test with the test underscore, right, method. Notice that if you use something like auto run, it means automatically it finds the names. When you say test meme, it means it will test the class meme. So that's how the magic works. So then you have all this assert syntax. You can search about them. The reason you should know is if you join an open source project that already uses this, then you want to keep using it. You don't want to tell them, hey, guys, change to R-Spec, right? Or you contribute to Ruby on Rails framework, you actually have to submit a test. So under this guy, assertion, you already learned assert equal. You can also do not equal and not nil, and then there are a few more. But it's really hard to read still, right? If you make sure that the error always throw an error, right? The code throw an error when something bad happened, you can also test. Right? If the user enter wrong password, maybe it just crash. Who cares, right? All right. We'll learn Ruby on Rails with R-Spec. And if you want to use with Cucumber and other things, I'm not teaching in this class. It's not necessary. Testing is to help you write code safer and faster. If you work for a certain company, they will want to introduce even more testing frameworks such as Cucumber that read even more like English. That's okay. But if you work on your own, you like to write tests, you're not going to write those things. It takes too much time. It's for working in a team. However, if you work on your own, you should still use R-Spec if you can. So let's turn this into R-Spec. The first thing we're going to make this code interesting is I'm going to change it to R-Spec. Now to install it, the way I normally do it, I know the name of the gem, so R-Spec is R-Spec Rails. And you go to rubygems.gems, and I don't remember what version is best to use. So I go here and copy the thing here on the left hand side and go into this and paste this in, right? Let's run bundle. And I have this gem. So I have to look at the documentation. Usually GitHub is good enough. So when you load it on Rails, right? Notice already supports Rails 5. Bundle install, here's the next thing you do. Rails generate R-Spec install. Let's do that. And here I explain a little bit. R-Spec is beautiful in syntax, but also in the number of features it supports. So it can show you colors. That's normally many testing framework doesn't have. And then you can set more configuration in here, HTML format or any other kind of format when you run the test, when you show it. The main file, you have to know, right? Forget about test folder now. You have a spec folder. And if you include more library, you put it in Rails helper. Like Factory Girl, right? Some of you have used Factory Girls before. So you can use that in this. And this is the standard. R-Spec can be used for non-Rails project. This is a regular Ruby project. So that's called spec helper. Just like in test, you have a test helper. It means the test framework know how to hook things up with your Rails code, right? But here it uses spec helper to understand the Ruby library and then Rails helper to load the Rails environment and then load spec helper. Okay, well, let's write some real tests. Now I have these guys now. I can just run bundle exec R-Spec. Now I can also try this, but it's not here. So you can actually generate, it's called bin stub. You may want to create a bin stub. So bundle bin stub R-Spec core. I run that. After I run that, I can now run R-Spec. So the beautiful thing with R-Spec is that now you can run anything inside. So spec folder, that's the entire directory, or you can run only the models or controller or any file, even one line in the file. Regular test framework doesn't have this. Okay, we don't have any tests yet. So let's go back and write some tests for our assignment here. So let's write some tests for event. Maybe category again, right? So let's do category. So R-Spec come up with, we have a few generator. You see here, R-Spec model. That's the one that we use pretty often. Whoops. You see the syntax is, well, if you already have a model, you can actually generate a test for that model. So let's create, how do you call it, category. So look what it does. It creates this category spec in this fetch folder, right? Models. So look at these guys. What it just did is it puts this category underscore spec, and it will automatically, in the past, Rails actually automatically understand that this tests the category.rb file. But now, because it loads the Rails environment, and you have to be explicit here, say R-Spec describe category, because it say that, oh, okay, now people think that should not have too much magic. Let's just make it clear. In the past, you don't have to make it that clear. All right, so here is the model type of test. Let's write test for this. So you want to group your tests in certain groups, and you want to test, let's say, one method at a time. I'm going to test validations. So here I can say context validations. And then the test, instead of the method test, the method is it. So let's say should, you can have should or not, or must, up to you. So some people think including this word is unnecessary. So you can say it checks for name, for presence of name. It makes sense, right? You can create, so the syntax is different. It's read like English. Expect category, something like that. But I need to know what category is. So category dot what? New. And then what? Expect category to, that's the syntax. Well, let's just try something simple first. Dot save to b is equal, so false. All right. Before I run this, I'm going to remove my test folder. I don't need it anymore. I'm just gonna add all my R-Spec stuff and then commit, like, adding R-Spec. Because my Git directory is clean. I like having it clean every time I do something there. So let's do R-Spec. Just run it. It passes. All right. So let's write something more useful. R-Spec. Let's make it into a true and see what happens. Right, you guys see that the error is much easier to read now, right? This, it will say category validation check for name fail. So it read from here, category validations, and then check. So you can make it read like English, right? So down here it say expected true got false. Well, that's not really clear for me, right? Sometimes you can actually do something like this. So expect R-Spec.errors to be empty. It means you're expecting, let's say it's the same test, right? Uh-oh, what happened, guys? Why is the error empty? Does anyone know? You haven't saved it, so it doesn't check. So error is not, so check it out. Expect this to be empty, but it's not true. This is a lot clearer. Your code will make sure it's very clear. Oh, expect the errors to be empty, but it's not. So how does it work? Actually, check this category errors.empty method. The be empty is just a way of turning it into English, right? And in the same way, I can do expect another thing, but I can expect error on name. Again, you can just turn it into anything and then see what it looks like. What does it say? Well, it fails the first error. I know that to not, right, be empty. Now the first error test will pass, but the second test will fail. It's not included in the list, right? So I go back to category. And I see, okay, this is really testing my validation. Sometimes this is really tedious. So if you're at home, you do like Shooter Matcher, right? You can include this gem by Thoughtbot. Again, if it works in a team, then it's nice. If you work alone, you may not need to do it. So you can include it as an R-Spec library, and then you can test all of these things. You can test the validation, and you test some of the association, has many. That's the uninteresting stuff. So, you can use it, and then just by using this shooter matcher, it support the regular test framework as well, but support R-Spec. Now this syntax, it's just a shorter way to do it. It's the same as it with the string validate presence of, and then by now we already know this curly braces means a block, right? Okay, well, I want to test more than just, let's try this again. All right, let's go to category. I go to my test. Now, what if I do this a lot of time, guys? With R-Spec, it's very common to do a let here, category, and then you put this guy, this category here, inside this block, and then you can do the same thing. But now I can write another test. Okay? Does it make sense? So I can also put it outside this context block, and this still works the same way. Let's show you, we can write another test method. It's not in the list. What happens? So, well, you can do this. You can also say include the string is not included in the list. I'm sorry, I have to teach you many ways to do the same thing because that's just how, you know, we learn things in Ruby. Just try to make sense how things work. This is another matcher, include, right? We learn EQ is equal B here with a method name without the question mark. And then here's the how you do it with include. I want to show you like how to test a method. So category maybe it's not that interesting. Let's look at the schema of categories. That's just name. Alright, we'll test something more interesting. Let's test events. Now it's getting hard. Alright, I don't even need to look at this event. Alright, I'm going to go straight to testing the event. Rails generate R-Spec model event. Right? Okay, let's go there. And if you just test something in general, you use context. But if you want to test a method, let's say if an event, what method you want? You want to know where it takes place, right? So venue name. So that's a method, but it's not a column. It's like a virtual attribute. So in here, you expect it should return name. So I like to put should there, but it returns venue, return nil if there's no venue. Right? Let's try that first. So event is event new. Right, by now, we're just gonna wrap it up here. Let event. Okay, the cool thing about let is that if you don't call it, it doesn't run it. Another way you can say is before block. You can put your code in here, but you have to do like event not new. But this is called before every single test. It's really up to you. Don't care about performance. You see, if you do it this way, you can do event something.save like that, right? But I'm not doing before. I'm just doing the event stuff here. All right. So I have an event. Expect event dot new dot venue name to be nil. All right. What happens if I run the test? What happened, guys? What fails? So this is called test driven, where you actually haven't written any code and you just make sure that it works. So you actually going to implement to make sure it works. Let's go in here, event, as define a method called venue name. Looks good, right? I run this again. Everything passes. Isn't that beautiful? We already finished implementing the method. Well, I'll just call it R-Spec model. Maybe it's faster, right? So it's just running that model. Okay. So great, but this test is not good enough then. So I need another one. Returns venue's name if there's a venue. Right? Not var. Okay. So in here, actually, I return the name. Let's say BRMIT. But for this to work, right? If you run this, it will fail. We already know that. So for this to work, let's say we set an event.venue to be venue.new name RMIT. If I run this, does it pass? Okay, well, it just say, well, you're comparing A, B, C, D. Well, how do I make it pass? I don't read this one dot name. Okay, let's just test only this method. I think there's a way to say it only true, but let's just test only this method. Why is it still failing? Say this string has to be this string. Do you see it? Expected this string to be this string. These two strings have different ID, right? These are every time in Ruby you do something with a string, it's a different object ID. So equal, right? Don't use B, don't use this. Use EQ, right? Actually, that you can't use this anymore. It used to be true, but if you use this one, it's the same as B. All right, let's use this. All right, excellent. So that's good. But if I now make sure I run everything, right? Does it pass, guys? Do all my tests pass? Yes? Haha! See, well, by writing tests this way, we learn how to write error-free code. Why does it fail? Sometimes people create name without venue, maybe. I mean, in this case, you actually want, see, this code doesn't even validate that a venue has to be there. So let's say in this app, I can have an event, and later the user can add the venue. How to make this code pass, guys? So do you do something like if venue, you return that, else you return nil? Okay, by now you already know this is ugly code, so let's try venue dot name, if not nil, right? Can you make it shorter? Venue, that's another way, right? So you can just do that. It's the same. So Ruby gives you the try method, and you have it for free. All right, everything passes. Let's make it more exciting. We'll run guard, Rails guard. At home, you might add this. It's more fun because now I don't have to look at the bottom of my screen. So how do I do it? Guard Rails. How do I make sure it's with Rails? I think there's a gem called guard Rails. So guard R-Spec. So I add guard and then guard R-Spec. With Mac, you may want to add this. It watches your file for changes. So it means that if you use this file, it's going to be a little bit more efficient. Otherwise, your hard disk worked a little hard. So that's okay. I add these guys in the development block, right? Guard R-Spec, and then don't worry about this guy. You don't have it, it still works. I run bundle one more time. Great. Let's generate that bundle guard init. So bundle exact guard init. That's what it says. And then you want to do maybe git init R-Spec. So the idea is with guard, it provides this file, guard file. Don't have to understand it very much, but you see that it runs bundle exact R-Spec every time that you make any changes in your code. So it watches spec files. You see this? It's a little silly. All this code, if you really try to understand it, it reads like English, so it should be okay. What it's saying is that any Ruby files that's changed, right, it will run R-Spec. You see the path? When it finds something, it will run them. So I don't have to explain this too much. I'll just run it. So I call guard. Well, you complain, you have you're not using the right thing. It's better just to do. You can generate the bin stub. I think you can do this bin stub. I think you can do this guard. I like doing bin stub. Uh-oh. How do I do that bin stub? Stub. Here, right? Bin stub guard. Okay, great. Now I do bin guard. Okay. Bundle exec is too long. If you add this bin path, bin folder to your path, then you can just have it for free. So notice I have guard. So I go back to my event. Great. I save this file. You see it? When I save it, automatically run, I have this for free. So I can also save it when I'm editing my test. That's also free. That's great. So that's how you test the models. Can you think of any more interesting tests? Let's look at our assignment. Take a look here and tell me if you can find another test we can write together that's more interesting. Anyone? Well, we can try it a different time, but, yeah? What test do you want me to write? Sorry? Quantity, right? Max quantity. Yeah. So it can have multiple types of ticket, each with different type of max quantity. That's great. So basically here, are you testing a method? You're just testing, it's a context, right? You're testing multiple tickets cannot have same what is this one? Each event has multiple price. It means, okay, it can be confusing when you're at home. So an event, you can have multiple ticket types, right? A ticket. So then you can have a ticket that hello, a ticket for general public, right? For VIP, right? So this is under ticket, and then you put it under. Say I go to ticket. I go to ticket here, ticket type, and then you can, let's say if you create the same idea, you create a model, Rails generate R-Spec model, ticket type, and now I have this guy up here. I can do context should not multiple tickets with different price. That's the idea. So in here, actually, I want to say it something. Your tests have to be in the it block, right? It handle 0 ticket case, something like that, right? It's 1 ticket type. So in here, you create just 1 ticket, and then you can create successfully. Then down here, I have it handle duplicates. So here's when it gets interesting. You can create basically, all right, ticket type 1 is ticket type. You want to make sure you can create them. So what is the schema of a ticket? Ticket types, right? So an event ID with many ticket type. So you say you already have an event. Let's say you could create an event. Some of you may use Factory Girl for this. So let's say you can create an event, and let's say ASD. Well, I create an event, and then in here, I create this event with event ID is event.id. Now, when you have association belongs to event, you can also skip it. You do that, right? Of course, you can also do the same thing. Ticket types.create. That's the same thing, but I want to do this twice. But I also pass in price is $1, and this one is price is $1. So you see, I'm trying to create these two things, right? And the first time it should work. The second time I will say expect type2.errors, right, to not be empty. Does it make sense? You can even say what kind of error it is. So that's how you test in this case. Well, in some cases, you say if you do this now, it will crash at event.create. Look at my test because of the validation, right? But if you really don't care about this event.create, you can do event.new or create, and it fails new, and then you can save this event anyway, right? Validate false, and I save it, right? And now I create this guy. Somehow the first ticket is like that. Second ticket, there's an error. I haven't added anything actually. So I expect this error to be something. I want it to be an error. Now right now it's empty. That's not good because I don't have that validation yet. So by running this test, now you can go and implement your code, right? So in your ticket type code, maybe you can do before create, right? Check duplicates. Is that right? So you can have this check duplicate, but it has, what kind of method is it? Check duplicate, right? And then here you can write the code. Basically, here's, you can just say find. Here's his ticket type. You find ticket type of the same one. Where, let's say, event is the same as my event. Again, this is an instant object. I'm trying to save my object, right? In the same event and same price. Same price. Price is my price. Okay? Self.price, self.event. And then, of course, you can check whether it is first. If you say if there is anything, right? Then you have to do errors.add, right? Right? You can add to certain kind of error, but you can add to base, right? So this is like something is wrong, right? Cannot have duplicate. Okay, so that's how you write the test. Well, this is easier. You can also write, look, this first, it's nil. If this already happens, so you can also say it's slightly faster if you write it this way. I don't care really, however you write it. This issue an exist query is slightly faster, and it will check it. And basically now I have an error in base, you see, right? So that's the idea. You have an error, and that's how you write this test. Now model itself is not good enough sometimes, but it's the most useful one, because you write this test, you can go to Rails console and you can test the methods yourself. But Rails also come up with tests for other things. So let's look at them. I provide this file so you can take a look. You can go to R-Spec documentation to see. Let's look at it together, right? If I write controller test, controller has to do a very simple thing. Load the variables, render the view. You can check a value and then you redirect somewhere else, but try to keep it very simple. So look at this guy, right? If I have a blog post, right, application. So in here, the index, basically you say, well, if I go to index, I should just return 200, right? Return 200 code, it means these two lines means pretty much the same thing. But if you want to add it there to make it clear, you can choose one of the two. But that's boring, right? You want to test more than that. So you can then add another test. Don't make your test too complicated, because if you write 10 tests, each test is simple. You can always delete the test you don't want. If you write one test that is very good, testing all the cases, well, what happens? Now you cannot delete it. You have to fix it. So write things in small chunks is always better for you. Here, idea here is just testing that it can render successfully. Here's testing that it choose the right template to render. It's really up to you. Sometimes some of this is way too obvious. You don't care. That's okay. Now it's more interesting. Load the variables. So the syntax you have to learn in this is a little tricky. So you just create two things in the database. And then you say, someone visit index. And you expect that this controller, when you visit index, again, this is not controller code. You just create two records in the database. You run this guy, and then controller somehow has to load a variable named post. And it has to load that, and it looks like this. So for this test to work, okay, I will try to write in here, your class post controller, and plural is better, active controller, what's that? Application controller base, right? And here, to make this test pass, you have to write, see, I'm not in Vim, and it's harder to write, huh? So post is, let's say post.all, right? But then later you might have to add something better, maybe post.published, right? So this is a scope, right? A class method or a scope, up to you. When you do this now, notice Rails automatically render, that's by default, it's almost like you call this, but Rails understands, right? So that's to test this, but you don't have to call it, Rails call it for you. When you do this post thing, it's an instant variable, so the view can use it. It's under assign. Okay, so just remember the word assign, that's all. All right, so that's how you test the post method. Let's look at another guy. That's okay. Here is, for example, today, right? There's an action today. It really depends on the behavior. Now, login, however, is different. You can actually do it in one line. You can do it get index, and you expect it to redirect to login. Of course, you can also do just get that, and then you expect, does anyone know? Response. You can also, let's say, in other cases, up here, so I just put it back here, so as an example. Whoops. Up here, you can actually do more than this one. Expect respond.body to include, maybe like, post. You can even do that. So you just include the text in the body, you check it. All right. So controller, straightforward, but you don't want to test that really, it belongs to your view test. So view is quite cool, but it's even less useful than controller test. Because sometimes your view, you change it, some designer come in, move your H1 element to H2, change things. But in view here, you can say, imagine you have this variable, but this is a different syntax, assign. Up here is assigns, sorry, controller assigns. Down here is just view. You can just look up the syntax. Now I want to touch this a little bit. You can do the post 1, post 2 just like that, event 1, event 2. Okay, but you have to do like event 1 is event.create, blah blah blah, right? So what is this thing that is called double? It's called test double. So under my lecture note, I'm not sure if you have it. Okay, you can find and you see it in the slides I'll share. But the idea is that you can actually make anything. If you don't really care, this one behave like an event. You just need to make sure that there are 2 things that are supposed to be event. So it's a double. A double means it's just a dumb thing. So you can have an array of 2 things, and you just test that someone in this view render a partial called event, and then this partial is called with 2 objects. Sounds okay, right? That's why you don't care what it is. But if you pass double, you pass event, it just means, oh, I'm faking 2 things of event class. You can even fake a thing called venue name is blah, and then when you call it dot value name, it will be this. Oh, now it's like, oh my god, when do I use it? It's okay, so don't worry, you will get there. So double is very useful if you don't care what it is, just to show the user, look, my test the logic of this view. It's not testing what the controller is trying to do, it's not testing what the model is trying to do. Okay, here's another one. In this case, I normally use event.new, that's good enough. Don't use double. This is good enough. That's okay. And you have this, that in the view somehow it called event.location, in your view file. How will this test pass? In the file call, let's say this file call app/view/event/show.html.erb. And up here, you actually, in this file, you actually have h1 event.location, maybe location name, right? Okay, well, if you have something like this, and later you don't care what people do here, class like crazy, or you do 2, all you care about is an event page must have a location. So by writing simple tests like this, you protect your app. You don't have a compiler that compiles your Ruby code every time. But if someone changed this to location name, now your app will catch it before you deploy it to the users, right? So that's the idea. This will still help. And sometimes you can write the test and ask someone else to write the view for you. Okay, well, that's okay. I used another 2 minutes to talk about other tests. Routing test, especially if you implement the user authentication. Now it's clear. Sign up. Someone goes to sign up. What should happen? It should take me to users and new. Users, controller, and new action. That's it. Whoa. You can write a route for that. So technically, if we're smarter at Coder School, we can write this test for your last homework. And then you run your homework, run the test will fail. Right? We haven't had time to do it. But it's quite cool, right? We build this test and you clone the project and you run it. After you can add this line. How do you add this line in your file, route file? Can't see anything here. In config routes.rb, here you do get signs up, sign up, oh my god, sign up, right? It goes to users new. Perfect, then this test will pass. Okay, and then this one, it means you don't want anyone, you don't want to accidentally Rails generate scaffold users and then anyone visit your app and list all the users. So you say, don't ever let anyone define a resources user, right? How to make this test pass? You know how you can have resources user here? But if you don't want this to be exposed except index. It means this will never give you the slash users, even though you accidentally have a def index method in user controller, and then this is not routable. Useful, right? Yeah, so maybe when you work together, it's kind of nice. So that now you understand. You can do more things. You can test the helper. One useful thing is, a link to an event. Let's say every time you have an event, it's like a link and then an image and something else. Then you have a helper. It's called link to event. And then you put it in the helper file. And how you implement this file? In apps/helpers. We already know in events helper. This is always loaded in your control view, right? So you can have, this will be module events helper, and then you somehow write this nice method link to event. Remember last time you have a method called flash messages and in application helper? All of that, you can test them if you want. And it's this one, you can do, link to event, you can do li, and then a, it's really up to you. You can use content tag, right? Div, right? Class name, card, maybe it's a card for event. There's so many ways to write HTML code. So in here, you can write, that's a div, right? And then now you can write like image tag of something. Okay, so event.image URL maybe, yeah. So this generate a div and an image. So Capybara is something that take it to the next level. You can run it in the browser. Basically now you use another thing called, again, DSL, domain specific language. Ruby, again, with Ruby you can do crazy stuff like this it and everything else, but here when you do this, it will go to the view and find anything, visit this URL, find an input, let's say username, fill in, click, and it submit the browser. If it fail, you can actually say save a screenshot, and then you can look at that screenshot. It's saved to an HTML file. So if you run this test on the server, you can make it save to screenshot and email to you, and that's quite cool. You can read a little bit more. For your code, you may want to write this test, but this is called one of the integration tests. When you test this visit login and then you can submit, it's testing everything. Testing that it goes to the route goes to the controller load the variables from certain logic from model and database, render the view, you submit to another action in controller, and that controller sign you in, right? That's a session, so testing session. All right, so behavior development is different from test development. Behavior-driven development, BDD, they're more or less the same thing. Test-driven development just means that, you write test first and you write code. Behavior just means, wait, you write test, but do you really know what you need to test, right? Well, no, but I can write my behavior. And then you say, but this behavior is not good. You can change your behavior, add more behavior. So with that, behavior development start with outside in. You start with things that, my behavior of logging in. When you start writing a few behavior, you just start going to the lowest level model, right? So unfortunately, there's only so much time to cover like testing. I cannot explain stubbing, faking, double stuff. So give a try with the homework. In lab, we learn a lot of this in lab, and so you know. All right, so I'll put this document here for you to read, and of course the video of what we just talked to is very fast. So sorry about that. Thanks, guys. See you on Thursday.